across Texas. The issue is.
I'm Stephen Dial in Dallas. Rudy Koski has the night off.
I'm Greg Krugen in Houston, and this is Texas, the issue is.
We are 30 days until Election Day, and we probably saw the last debate in this presidential election cycle. I spoke to Dallas Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett in this final push.
We got to vote up and down the ballot.
Dallas freshman Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett's political stardom is on the rise, and it's gotten the attention of Vice President Kamala Harris.
And the most powerful woman in the world wiped my tears and listened.
Crockett spoke at the DNC convention and weeks later became a national co-chair for the Harris-Walz campaign.
So I was in Philly, I'm headed to Wisconsin. I am going everywhere that I can, talking to as many people as I can talk to.
I just want to let y'all know.
I spoke to Crockett while she was in her district for the State Fair Classic. With 30 days until Election Day, I asked her what concerns her the most as we head into the final stretch.
It's quite unnerving to find that there's so many people that have no idea what's going on. And so it is important that we get out of our bubbles and recognize that not all of us are paying attention to the local news or national news or even social media. Some people just are in their own kind of silos, and so it's important that we reach out to them, we talk to them, and we educate them.
Inflation and the economy are kitchen table concerns for many voters. While prices have gone down, many consumers will say it hasn't declined fast enough.
There's only one candidate that's talking about the struggles when it comes to housing and wants to make sure that there's $25,000 down payment assistance that can be made available for first-time home buyers. There's only one candidate that's talking about those small businesses and being able to make sure that they can get started. Instead of saying a $5,000 tax benefit, we'll give you a $50,000 tax benefit so that you can get started. As well as when we think about childcare, it was the Democrats in the House and Senate that made sure that people were getting $300 a child to help them with the child tax credit. And so she wants to bring that back for folks. So, you know, we know that there's still more work to do.
This week I sat down here in Houston with Republican Congressman Dan Crenshaw to get his take on the choice before voters in the upcoming presidential election. Texas Congressman Dan Crenshaw believes this presidential election should be about policy, not personality. And he's convinced Kamala Harris is out to steadily obliterate the Lone Star State's most valuable and sustaining industry.
And they're still obsessed with wind and solar, and they're absolutely obsessed with destroying the fossil fuel industry.
Crenshaw predicts a gradual degradation via regulation if the Democratic nominee prevails.
The Democrats play this very dangerous game where they know you don't feel that crazy regulation right now, and they know that you won't remember they did it 10 years from now when your life is totally different. And you can't prove a counterfactual.
In terms of social issues, Crenshaw expressed deep concern over Democratic zeal to advance trans rights at the expense of American girls.
It's a yes or no question. Do you think men should be in women's sports, or do you think that should be illegal? And most of the public thinks it should be illegal. Most of the public thinks it's wrong. You are not in line with most of the public, certainly not most Texans.
And as voters ponder their choice, Crenshaw urges them to remember the millions of unvetted migrants allowed to cross and stay on Kamala Harris's watch.
You could assume 99% of them are just like economic migrants just trying to get jobs and kitchens and things. But 1% equals a lot of people here who could be terrorists. And some of them, and hundreds have been on the terrorist watch list, and those are just the ones we've caught. Think about crime. Think about foreign policy and showing peace through strength as opposed to just coddling our enemies until they invade other countries.
Greg, I think my one word for both of those interviews together are nerves. What about you?
Stephen, plenty of options here. I'm going with brawl.
All right, we'll be right back and have a guest with us after this break. And we're back, and we're joined by Bill King with Real Clear Politics. Greg, you'll get first up to bat. We are 30 days away, really closer to that when you think about early voting. What does your gut say about this presidential race?
Stephen, this is sheer speculation, but I tend to hearken back to 2016 when many Donald Trump supporters played possum when it came to responding to pollsters. Now, in the handful of states where it matters, I view two factors as critical: fear and euphoric recall. Both candidates have whipped up fear in their base as to what America will look like if the opposition prevails. You know, the threat of lawless, amoral socialism from one side and abusive autocratic tyranny from the other. In places like Pennsylvania and Georgia, winning and losing for Donald Trump may well depend on whether voters believe they were economically insecure or less so and more prosperous when he was in charge. For the consummate salesman, that's the deal he has to close with undecided swing voters. The wild card factor in this election remains the significant number of Republicans and independents who find the former president repugnant, self-serving, unhinged, and ultimately far more dangerous than a lifetime hard lefty like Kamala Harris. Bottom line, I have no idea who will win.
I don't either, but man, Kamala Harris still seems like she has momentum, but those swing states is really going to come down to just a handful of states in this big race. Bill, do you think there will be any October surprise?
There's certainly nothing on the horizon right now, but you never know when there's going to be an exogenous event. There could be a terrorist attack, a stock market collapse or something, but we certainly don't see anything on the horizon right now. And it's got to be something that directly affects those 7 states, because outside those 7 states, everything is pretty well decided at this point in time. And right now, those 7 states are all too close to call. I think the biggest lead right now is Harris and Wisconsin of about 1.9%, which is still within the margin of error. So all 7 of the swing states are within the margin of error, so they could go either way.
Greg, the biggest race in Texas is definitely the Senate race. I mean, viewers have told me on the street they are tired of seeing all of these commercials. Ted Cruz, Colin Allred are facing off in November. Now, there have been states who have elected a one-party person for one seat and then the different party for the president. Do you think that can happen here in Texas?
Look, a Democrat hasn't won statewide in Texas for 3 full decades, and the political bookmakers still don't expect that to change this November 5th. That said, the Astros weren't supposed to be swept by the upstart Detroit Tigers either. My point, lightning can strike, especially against Ted Cruz. Additional stretch run millions from national Democrats is helping Allred fund a blitzkrieg over the airwaves and what will ultimately be the most expensive Senate race in our state's history. Our friend Dr. Mark Jones says at least 1 out of 4 Texas voters knows little or nothing about Allred. So this contest could end up being more of a referendum on Ted Cruz, who everybody knows and who Texans like significantly less than Donald Trump.
Yeah, see, I was not going to bring up the Astros. You went there, and so that was a really good analogy. And then there's something that some fans call the Ted Cruz curse. I don't think he was at that game, though. Bill, Cruz only beat Beto O'Rourke by 3 points last time he was on the ballot. Now, Beto O'Rourke is a totally different candidate than Colin Allred. What does your gut say about this race?
I think it's very close. Cruz is significantly underperforming Trump in the state. Trump is up by 6 and change, and Cruz is up by 3 and change. So he's a full, 3% behind Trump. And by the way, they get you down very close to the margin of error. I think the question here is, are the polls adequately predicting who's going to vote? And what I wonder about in this election are young girls that typically don't really vote in elections. Are they concerned enough about the overturn of Roe versus Wade that it's going to get them to the polls? And by the way, Greg, this is kind of what we saw in 2016. There were a bunch of white working class people that hadn't voted in a long time, and the pollsters didn't figure out that they were coming to the polls, which resulted in that margin of error and allowed Trump to win it. And so I think the question is, are we using the right turnout models in Texas? And it won't take much error on that to change this race.
Yeah, turnout is going to be huge, and a lot of people have been registering to vote. I know in some of the urban counties here up in the North Texas area, some counties have seen turnout increase, some have seen it steady. We'll have to wait and see. That's all the time we have for this week. To see this episode or any of our past ones, go to our station's YouTube channels, and then make sure you hit us up on social media to keep the conversation going.
The Texas Trio will be back next week as we continue down the stretch run to this critical November 5th election. In the meantime, Don't forget to let us know what you think the issue is.